Today I have wanted to deal with circumcision. Now, we just went over chapter 2 of Romans, but it had a different criteria. And Romans chapter 2 is a great place to start out with Paul, how he views circumcision. We're going to start in verse 25. Paul is not for circumcision. Paul is not against circumcision. Circumcision divides two groups, and you'll see that. You'll see that in the next chapter. Okay, so 25. For circumcision verily profited if you keep the law. So if you can keep the law and you're able to keep the law, then it's a profit. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcised. So their trust that their salvation in their circumcision is broken. Paul is not against people being in the law or under the law. 26. Therefore, if the uncircumcised keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? Whether someone is cut in the foreskin or not, what matters is keeping of the law. The cut of the foreskin was only to an outward appearance to show that you are a keeper of the law. 27. And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judges thee, who by the letter and circumcision doest transgress the law. Paul is opposing a question here. If an uncircumcised person has kept the law by nature, would that person be able to judge a person who by the letter and circumcision has transgressed their law? And that's the question that Paul is put before them, and he is alluding to Christ, but he's trying to keep their interest. 28. For he is not a Jew outwardly. That means he has not been circumcised as the way of the flesh, showing outwardly. Neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh. Almost my same words. 29. But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not of the letter. The letter, who praises is not of men, but of God. Okay, so where is Paul going with this? Now, this is only dealing with circumcision, right? We're not going to deal with law, or Paul will deal with law in chapter 3. Whether a person is circumcised outwardly or not has no hold or position on people anymore. What is important is the circumcision of the heart in verse 29 in the spirit, having a new heart put within you and having a stony heart taken away. The letter could never do that. It was weak. It was weak. It was impossible, actually, if you go to Hebrews chapter 7. And chapter 3, we only have a little bit of verses that we can look up. What advantages then hath the Jew or the prophet is there of circumcision? Do you think he's speaking of circumcision of the heart or the flesh? I believe he's speaking of the flesh. What advantage does the Jew have, and what profit is there of circumcision? And he says in verse 2, much in every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God. So they are the beholders of the utterances of God, oracles, utterances, what Christ or what God has given them. And that's important. They're the holders or bearers of the Old Testament. So there is a ministry, all right? Paul has said, has this ministry died? No, it's still here. And this ministry he'll speak of in 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians chapter 3, and it's the ministry of death. But he says, we are not part of the ministry of death. So there's two ministries. There's two parts of the body, at least two or more. So we're not to mess with this part of the body. We are to control this part of the body within the body. So we will go to Galatians chapter 5. So Paul is getting with it. Now, some people have come into Galatians and put a big stumbling block in front of these Galatians. Verse 3, let's kind of get into it. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Now, this would be a person that would be a Jew who would go in front of a community and say that they were committed to do the whole law. They have took a contract to do the whole law. And that's what these people in Galatia is urging these people to do. Right now, there's two ministries. Now, you just saw that Paul is not against the ministry unto death, right? It's a ministry to dead people. It's to wake people up. Paul is a minister unto life, and the two don't join. The two are separated. It's two different ministries. Christ is become of no effect unto you, verse 4, whosoever of you are justified by the law. Right? Now, this is the person who says that you will do the whole law. If you dedicate yourself to the law, then Christ is of no effect. If you rest in the law, if you trust in the law, if you believe that if you break that law, then you will have damnation. That's what Paul is getting at. Where is your trust at? What can send you to a bad place, and what can send you to a good place? And it is by the words of Christ, trusting in His words. That's our salvation. All right, so he, in verse 4, is going to explain to them now that you are fallen from grace. You have been deceived. You have taken on the law which no man could complete. It is only through Christ Jesus that we can complete this law. 5. For we through the Spirit wait for the hope of the righteousness by faith. The law was to give righteousness, but no one could ever do the law, so righteousness never came through the law. Abraham received righteousness, and it was by faith. For in Jesus Christ neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision. So it is not the cutting away of the flesh, or not having the cutting away of the flesh. He's also going at, it's not the law. He's just showing that if we go under the law, then you have fallen by grace. He showed that and proved that in the verses above. But faith which worketh love, the law worketh anger. resentment, brings judgment against your brother. But faith worketh by love, forgiveness, kindness. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. You did run well, verse 7. Who did hinder you that ye should not obey the truth? In verse 7, I believe he's just saying someone really ran you over. I mean, they really stuck it to you. This persuasion cometh not of him that called you. Who was you called by? Christ. He is saying this person has deceived them. This person is not of them. And if we take people in like this, if we accept them, they're going to disturb people and they're going to pull them away. Verse 9, a little leaven leaveth the whole lump. This is something that is not acceptable in a group. I have confidence in you through the Lord that ye will be none otherwise minded. But he that troubleth you shall bear his judgment, whosoever he be. So Paul don't know where this come from. But this person that has come to test them, they got a lot of troubles coming. God's going to stick it to them. Now, verse 11 is a little bit confusing, so let's go through it. And I, brethren, if I yet preach circumcision. So, what is Paul saying? If Paul was to accept circumcision, if I yet preach circumcision, does Paul preach circumcision? No. The next statement qualifies that. Why do I yet suffer persecution? If circumcision was okay, why do I suffer this persecution that's been given to me? He will not let this into his group. Then is the offense of the cross ceased. The cross offends the circumcision. People are saying, why is it not okay to get circumcised? Because the cross stopped that. If you circumcise on the outside, then you're not trusting of the circumcision of the heart and of the spirit. And that's what Paul is getting at. What do you trust in? Is it down there or is it up here? It should be up in your heart. I would they were even cut off, which trouble you. See, he wants to purify the people. He wants these people cut away. So Paul is very strong in his opinion about circumcision. There's not much of a question about it. He suffered persecution because of it, because it offends them. The cross offends, yet he stands for the cross.